Welcome to another weekly recap of Trinidad Bhojpuri Words and Phrase. This is a KDC production in collaboration with Caribbean Hindustani. I'm Karen Das.
And I'm Dr. Visham Bhimull from Caribbeanhindustani.
Let's kick off with the word MOORI, our Trinidad Bhojpuri word. If you replied with the head, you're absolutely right.
I remember the first time I would have encountered this word. It would have been in the Kawahakanike Kisa story where the 6 queens were pretending to be ill to get the sympathy of the king. Yes. And they tied bands around their heads to pretend to be ill. So Shtiloli had said, u log ke MOORI band kar, or band ke, meaning that on banding their heads. So MOORI I heard as head there, as I learned it for the first time. It is used and attested to MOORI, mu'ara, like in ladka, is a retroflex. It means head. Sir or sir is also used for head in standard Hindi more often. But both words, MOORI and sir, are used in both languages. MOORI more in Bhojpuri, Trinidad Bhojpuri, as we're talking about here. And sir is more used in Hindi. But again, you would find people in Trinidad Bhojpuri from time to time, less frequently so using sir.
Yes. And we noted the response on Facebook. Many people said head. And moor is also used in Fiji. And Sudhir also mentioned sir being used in Hindi. In Mauritius, they say kapar is head as well.
Yeah, I think as well in Trinidad Bhojpuri, one of my interviewees, Dr. Abacadabra, told me that word as well. But as per interviews, I have not heard it used.
Okay, so MOORI, head. So thank you all so much for participating. Well, they say a dog is man's best friend, but Hathi Mere Sathi is also possible, which we would remember from that 70s flick with the word Hathi, which was used in our Trinidad Bhojpuri word for the day, Hathi.
Yeah. Interesting how we maintain words for animals that do exist in Trinidad. I mean, only in the zoo you might probably see one. But again, it goes in line with the storytelling tradition and the flora, fauna, and geography of India that we now maintain here via vocabulary. We all know heart is hand, and we did it. And now we're in Hathi, right? I had questioned myself as to, well, what's the similarity? Is there a link? But there is. So the word heart comes from hasta, from Sanskrit, which means hand. And if you notice the name of the capital in the Mahabharata, which is Hastinapur, so the Hast becomes Hasti, right? How it came to be is that humans would have perceived the elephants as having an extra limb, which is a trunk. Extra limb meaning a hand, which obviously Hast would have a root with, as being a limb or an appendage. So in Sanskrit, the word Hast is hand. Hasti is elephant, or the being or individual, the animal with additional limb or hand. And then you get Hastinapur, because Pur is city, right? Because, in the Mahabharata, we know that in Hastinapur there was a large population of elephants, and elephants was a main feature of the war of Kurukshetra in the Mahabharata. So there's a relationship between heart and Hathi, the being with the additional limb. Yeah.
Well, elephants are known for many things, including their strength. So we followed up with the Trinidad Bhojpuri phrase, JOR SAY. Now, some replied with loudly and some replied with strength. So can you clarify, Dr. Bhimull?
Right. So those who look at these ETV series or Star or whatever, it have multiple now. It's not just ETV.
Yeah.
When you look at like Saregama, I don't even know if they still have that, but I know they have a lot of competitions. So Zor means strong, powerful. Like we say, do it hard, hit it hard in Trini English Creole. So in that context, that's what it means. So we use hard as in something physically hard in standard English, but we would say do it hard, do it with strength in Trinidad English Creole. So just like I say, well, talk hard,
Uh-huh.
and speak loudly. So I just given you the context of how we use it, right? Yeah. So zordar means lofty in this context, and talia means applause. So zordar talia means lofty round of applause, which is what the host would say after a performance or speech. And then, the expression zor se boliye means speak loudly, right? Talk hard, I will say in English. Za becomes ja in Bhojpuri, so zor becomes jor. Now, whenever I have a za, it means it would not have come from Sanskrit, it would have come from Persian Arabic, right? This is from Persian. Again, that's the linguistic history of Hindi Bhojpuri. So, but those sounds not in Trinidad Bhojpuri. So all zas become ja. So jor means strength. Hardly say makes the noun an adverb. So jor say now means with strength or loudly or with gusto or whatever. Right, as adverb. So yeah, jor say means like I don't know. I remember my grandmother one year trying to do something. Let's say open a jar or lift up something, and you're failing to do it. The old people say jor say.
Put some strength
do
in
it with
it.
some with some additional strength. So that's the context they would use it in. So yeah, if it says jor say in a context of speaking, it means loudly. In a context of applause, it means lofty. And in a context of physically doing something, it means with strength.
Okay. And we can also use this in a more updated context to mean put more effort into something. Would we be able to say jor se?
Yeah, well, how they would use it, well, it would be like that. They say, do it harder. That's how it is in English too. Do it harder. So yeah,
Jor se.
yes.
Okay. All right. Now we move on to the olfactory system. And yes, there is a Trinidad Bhojpuri word for that. Sunghi.
So I want to explain some things there here, quite interesting. So we don't realize how related the words are. The average Pandit would use the word shrota. I don't know if you know what shrota means.
Yes, the person sitting, listening to discourse or participating in puja.
Listening, the person listening, right?
Right.
So all these words like shrut means listen, and shrut means listen. So shrota is the listener, and we get the word suna from shruta, right? So in the same way, sunghna, again related to smell, we know the word as sugandh, which means fragrant smell. We hear that in bhajans.
Yes, we do.
So the word sugandh is where that word still exists in, where we know as people of the diaspora where that word exists in where we in an aspect of every language or domain where we interact. Sugandh means fragrant. Anga sugandh gandh. I think I remember that from a song, right? Yeah. So the verb of that noun is sunghna in Hindi. It becomes sunghe in Bhojpuri. So yeah, that's how we get it. It means to smell, and sunghai would be the sense of smell. As you see in slowly here how what we might know in our formal context of religion from Sanskrit, how the words eventually would have evolved over time to now become what they are in Hindi. I just gave 2 examples. And Bhojpuri, obviously, yes, with a different pronunciation.
Great. Well, folks got that one right. Sunghe, to smell. And Friday word, Trinidad Bhojpuri word, khattai. Khattai. And this was a fun one because I thought khattai was simply sour, but actually folks were a bit more specific with it. So I also received a response: dried mango in mustard oil with
Yes,
anchar masala and lots of
That,
pepper.
yes, that's it, that's it. And I honestly must admit that I never saw it, or maybe I did, but I remember my mom says, when I was learning Hindi, I learned the word khatta means sour,
Right.
right? So R and I at the end, like we said just now. So dek is to see, dekhai is the sight. Sunghe is the smell, sunghai will be the sense of smell.
Mm-hmm.
So khatta is sour. So kathai, adding the I now makes it the noun. Adjective is the noun. It becomes sourness,
Right.
right? But remember, in our Bhojpuri context, it's like, I don't know if the kids know who listen to the sour balls. It's called sour balls
Yes.
or sour or something. So now you use the name to name what it is because it's so tasty, right? So they now in Trinidad Bhojpuri, at least I don't know in India, because what tends to happen here is the words we would use. It's a local a local way, unique way in which the language would evolve. So if we call the dry mango preparation the kathai, it may not necessarily be called that in India or other places. More research is needed to figure it out. But that's exactly what you said. That's what my mom said my grandfather used to like to eat, my nana.
Okay, because there was also Ramesh Prasad Singh on Facebook who described mango dried, then cooked with jeera, mustard oil, lots of pepper. But he also mentioned that it's slowly disappearing and it's being replaced with chutney and achar that has become more popular. But they refer to it as mango khattai.
I just want to say hi to Ramesh. Ramesh and I know each other. He's from Jamaica, but he lives in the U.S. And I want to mention Karan. Hi to both of them.
Oh, wonderful! Right, yeah. So he basically described what khattai really is, at least according to what we were discussing. It's actually a food for some folks. And here we go with another week's worth of Trinidad Bhojpuri words and phrase. This is a KDC production in collaboration with Caribbean Hindustani. In this episode, Chachundar, Dagmagaye, Bhagwan HIJAANE, Chirai, and garam masala. Dr. Bhimull, let's go with chachundar. Have you ever been called chachundar growing up? Because I've heard this used in songs, but many respondents revealed this was what their grandmother would call them when they were being naughty during childhood.
So the word chachundar, I would have grown up with my grandmother or somebody else who would speak Hindustani. I would say, he's a damn chachundar, right? In the context of a disparaging way. So I thought when I was growing up in the context of a good-for-nothing person, who would waste your time, a person who is of ill repute, that kind of thing.
Right.
And then when I traveled to Suriname, they use it as a loose woman, right? So it's used in that context. And yeah, the saying goes, the snake swallows the whatever animal with spikes, chachundar, be it hedgehog,
Mole
be
rat.
it mole rat, or be it porcupine. Nigalat, ugalat, pir ghaneri. And so wheels in pain, because remember, if these words had a wider meaning, just over time, contextually, they kind of reduced in what they would be used in. Specifically, so something could have been positive or negative, and now you only use in a negative context.
Well,
That's how languages evolve.
Well, I have to note that most of the respondents on Facebook said wicked, worthless, hardened, lazy, someone who's wayward, someone who doesn't listen, an idiot of some sort, someone said. It's interesting that you brought up your grandmother because a few folks mentioned their grandmother referring to them as chuchundar, meaning that they go wherever they want, they do whatever they want. And it's mostly unflattering. All right, so that wraps up chuchundar, our Trinidad Bhojpuri word, which took us to Doug Magaye.
Right, so what we don't realize too, just like in English, like the word jingle is an onomatopoeia. The word sounds like the sound, right? There are a lot of words that are in English, it happens in Hindi too. So, dugmug is an onomatopoeia. So, dugmug sounds like a sound. And it sounds like a sound of something which is not level.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody, one leg who's shorter than the other leg, a table leg that's shorter, and in movement it goes dugmug, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's how it comes to mean dugmagawe, means to make that noise. It sounds like somebody staggering, limping, unsteady within that context.
Great. Now we know Doug Magaye. Our Trinidad Bhojpuri phrase, Bhagwan HIJAANE, which was easy enough to work out because we had Hum Na Jane. So you make your replacements with Bhagwan HIJAANE.
But what response did I get? Because you see, the he construction or he particle is quite important even for Hindi grammar teachers.
All right.
Anybody,
So mostly God alone knows, God only knows, only God knows.
Right. So I'm glad they say realize that he is only, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in Hindi or Bhojpuri, you have two particles, emphatic particle of exclusion and emphatic particle of inclusion, right? Everybody might know the emphatic, or most people know the emphatic particle of inclusion, which is bhi also, right? Main bhi, me too, right?
Yes.
Or hum bhi, in Bhojpuri say hum hu, right? Me too. And then there is the emphatic particle of exclusion, he, which is what we use here, which means this only, specifically. So Bhagwan hi jane. Only God knows, right? But remember, when you say it in English, you don't have to use the only. You say God knows, meaning in the emphasis of saying God knows, it's implied only he, right? So often you notice even in Bhojpuri and Hindi that they use this he where we wouldn't use it in English. We just raise our voice for emphasis. So that's a unique point to note about the Hindustani language, or Hindustani languages, which would be Bhojpuri and Hindi.
Wonderful. We went into another Trinidad Bhojpuri word, chirai, and everyone messaged in with bird.
Yeah, so chirai. So in those who would learn formal Hindi, the word is chiriya, feminine word, chiriya. So the cognate for that would be chirai, which you could see it sounds the same. Chirai specifically is a Bhojpuri word, and because that is in Trinidad Bhojpuri, whereas chiriya is a Hindi word. So this is an example where the use of the word would determine, he's speaking Hindi or he's speaking Bhojpuri.
Chirai. And we usually wrap up the week with a food-related Trinidad Bhojpuri word. Well, this is a combination of two words, but a spicy mix. Garam masala.
Yeah, so garam is the adjective, hot, in this context. So there are specific word I think we're not sure if we explored it. That means hot as in spicy in each, right? Mm-hmm. But garam really, honestly, most of the times will be used in heat as in temperature. But in this context, garam, which means hot, is used as
peppery,
to taste, as in spicy, right? Well, I mean, is the adjective describing hot, and well, masala means spices. But masala is spices, not just any spices. There are specific mix of spices we use, especially in the Indo-Caribbean diaspora. We have wet masala and dry masala. You know, the dry masala you buy in the grocery. The wet masala would be the ones you prepare in the seed and load.
Thank you for joining us for another weekly recap of Trinidad Bhojpuri words and phrase. Many thanks to Dr. Visham Bhimull and Caribbean Hindustani. This has been a KDC production. You can stay with us for more Trinidad Bhojpuri words and a phrase. If there is a word or a phrase you would like for us to include, feel free to hit me up on Facebook. Send me a message. We always love to hear from you.